Professional Serving Community, talkradio.nyc.
Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Marasanico. Welcome to the A Train to Sedona broadcast. There's also a book I wrote called The A Train to Sedona, a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. I wrote the book because I wanted my voice to be heard, but also to inspire your journey. You can purchase a signed copy of the book on my website, lindamarasanico.com, on Buy the Book page, and also at retail and bookstores. And if you'd like to read the first 7 pages for free, you can go to amazon.com. I also have a free gift for you. It's called the Cheat Sheet for High Vibration Living. 7 exercises designed to allow you to bring your energy to the present moment. When you get off balance in this troubled world today, you can bring yourself to a positive place and to a high vibration. You can download a free copy on my website at lindamarasanico.com. I have 2 disclaimers. One is this broadcast does not establish a professional relationship. And 2, the opinions expressed on talkradio.New York City do not represent the network. Now, today, I have as my guest, Barbara With. Barbara With is an international peace activist, acclaimed author, publisher, composer, performer, psychic channel, and co-founder of Conflict Revolution, World Peace, One Person at a Time, Starting with Self, a revolutionary way to resolve conflicts of the psyche as a pathway to world peace based on her work, channeling the angels and Albert Einstein. She has authored 6 award-winning nonfiction books on metaphysics, teaches and trains conflict revolution in the classroom and on Zoom, and is currently on a world peace tour, calling out to the participation of the willing for a worldwide nonviolent action to end the age of war, starting with self. Barbara, welcome to the A Train to Sedona.
Thank you, Linda, for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I think we're going to have a very exciting conversation. My first question, sorry?
Yes, absolutely.
My first question is, when you think of your youth, your childhood, your adolescence, what are the influences that bring you to where you are today?
Mostly it was music. Music was a focus of my self just naturally. From the time I was 4 or 5, I started to teach myself how to play the piano. My whole family was musical. My mother was the choir director at church. And I started writing music when I was 12 or 13. So that the only thing I ever wanted to do in my whole life was to be a rock star. And I left high school with a couple of good solid sets of original material and set out on the road. And that really was the groundwork for the work that I eventually came to do as a psychic channel.
What do you see as the jumping off point or the transition from music into channeling?
In the big picture of things, the focus first on music allowed me to, I would say, sort of air quote, safely explore the non-physical,
Mm-hmm.
explore those areas that are generally uncharted and unknown and can be frightening to our average psyche, but to do it in a way that was very acceptable to be a songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started to actually do channeling myself, it was only after I had been exposed to it in high school. A friend's mom was a channel. We didn't call her that, but she would gather us together and close her eyes and get out of the way and say the most amazing things to us about our lives and where we were going and what we were doing and our psychological states. So I knew what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time I did spontaneously start automatic writing, I think it was 1987, I knew what it was. Uh, and I knew that it was something that felt like songwriting too. Close your
Wow.
eyes, get out of the way, listen for
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And so it all sort of merged at that point.
How old were you when you started automatic writing?
I think that was 32. I was 32. Yeah, because it was 1987. 32. Yeah. But I had been going to the psychic since I was 16 and I was reading tarot cards and was very familiar with what it was, but it was still very shocking. Like, what?
What would you say the role of spirituality is in your life?
It's hard to separate spirituality from my life. That from the time I was so small and I had this mission and it was music at first,
Mm-hmm.
but that was my spirituality. It was what saved my life through the trauma of that I grew up in, and it guided me everywhere and it set me up. And it was my music was my religion for
Mm-hmm.
many years.
Mm-hmm.
And so including then this sort of spirituality of channeling and psychic mediumship,
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are people in the world who are psychics and who are mediums. I'm not sure how many psychic mediums intentionally devote themselves to a higher purpose and mission. I'm not saying they don't. I just don't know because I'm just me. I just have had my path and I know my path isn't average or like everyone else's.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's always been between the music and then the spirituality is it's the reason to live, really.
Well, I think of music as the universal language. And
Absolutely.
yeah, I remember my mother saying that when she listened to music, and this is pop and different genres, but it brought back memories and feelings and nostalgia. So it's very powerful.
Yeah, it can activate because of the frequencies that are, I don't know if you might call them like superimposed. When you're in and we all do this, at some time in our youth, maybe we have our first dance or we go to something that's emotionally charged for us and the music is playing. And for the rest of our natural lives, every time we hear that song,
Mm-hmm.
we'll be in that place, we'll have that emotion because it's kind of stored in our molecular body, I think, only
Mm-hmm.
to reverberate again.
Yes, it's, I think, a wonderful experience when that happens. So I want to shift things a little bit. What is conflict revolution and how is it different from conflict resolution?
Yes. Well, conflict resolution is a very specific process that two parties who are conflicted go through, and it involved better listening. It involves compassionate language. It involves maybe sensitivity stuff. And then you come back to the table and you each are able to negotiate that
Mm-hmm.
conflict. Conflict revolution is completely not that. It's a completely different approach to conflict that says, let's first and foremost revolve revolution, our focus off the arena, and bring it back to us first and foremost to see before we go to the table to do all those things, what the arena of the conflict might be showing us about our internal conflicts. And when we resolve it here, not only do we come back to the table sort of a much different person, but things tend to naturally shift in the outcomes. So, for example, I've seen conflicts, my own and others, where somebody brings a conflict to the workshop, and they've had this conflict with their mother-in-law for 20 years. And when they go through the process of first turning back here and they get this piece, it's as if 20 years of conflict have suddenly looked differently.
Yes.
We call it the Rolodex effect back in the day when you had a Rolodex.
Yes.
It's like flip, 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 flip all the way back. You think of all the times you thought your mother-in-law hated you or didn't respect you, and you do the revolution and you find it here and you find out, oh, wait, that was me. And then you do what we help you do to resolve that internally first and turn back to the arena. And suddenly your mother-in-law is acting differently. Suddenly things that you couldn't have gone directly at in the arena start to unfold quite naturally. It's really a phenomenon. I'm, after all these years, 40 some years of developing it and studying it and mastering it, I'm still amazed.
So you're teaching it currently?
Yes, I've been teaching it since 1999. It started out as a staff development course for a company that I was contracting with as an executive assistant or what have you, contractor. And it's just grown from there. And what I'm doing right now is I've just put up a masterclass, which is the complete Einstein. It's a masterclass of the complete Einstein. So it's not just conflict revolution, but it's the unified field theory and the map of human consciousness, and compassion is the fifth fundamental force that we've delivered in our books. And then I'm also just about done, maybe by the time somebody gets there, it'll be there, with a kind of a shorter version of it, just to get people to understand the basics of conflict revolution, how easy it is. I mean, I don't want to say it's easy. It's easy to understand.
Yes.
It's very, very elemental to understand. And it's hard to do because you have to be willing to want to go in there and do this shadow work, which a lot of people don't, but that's all right. We work with the willing.
Yes, and eventually people will be willing, because we're changing ourselves and our energy shifts, and people are inspired by that. And
Yes.
it's said that, the butterfly that flutters its wings has an effect from the Ukraine to somewhere else on the globe. And I am a believer in my change helps others. Your change helps me. It just goes on and on and on. It's a ripple effect.
Absolutely. And what I like to stress, as I've been coming up on 2 years of my world peace tour, that I left my life behind to be on this tour, is to really stress to people, do not underestimate the power of the work that we do internally. Those of us who believe all of those things, as within, so without.
Yes.
We have to become the change. Peace begins. All of us who believe that and are working at that, do not underestimate how important the effect is on the globe.
Yes.
And people say to me all the time, but Barb, they're still fighting in Ukraine. There's still this and that. And I always say, do you know what? I think we wouldn't be here. I personally think the earth would not be here had it not, is it not for all of us who are committed to compassion, whether it's, the Christians who are praying in their traditional Christian ways, or however the Muslims pray, or who's ever praying for peace. We're all together in it, and we cannot underestimate the power that we have there. So I like to just encourage people, because it's hard work to
It is
own all
very
your
good.
stuff.
It is, trust me. And we do need to get ready for a break, Barbara. But when
Okay.
we come back, I want to talk about your relationship with Albert Einstein.
All righty.
So it's time for a break, and we'll be back with the A Train to Sedona. My guest, Barbara With.
Co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a high-achieving, growth-oriented leader? Are you interested in developing your authentic leadership while creating a healthy, inclusive workplace? Hi, I'm Dr. Mira Brancu, host of The Hard Skills on talkradio.nyc at 5 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays, where we discuss how leaders develop the hard skills needed to make a greater impact. We interview experts, have live coaching, and tackle these challenges. Listen to The Hard Skills on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the A Train to Sedona. I'm Linda Marsanico with my guest, Barbara With. Barbara, will you share with our listeners your relationship with Albert Einstein?
Well, I'd love to. I jokingly call myself the third Mrs. Einstein. I didn't know him. When I started out channeling all those many years ago, I just thought I was an antenna. I didn't think of myself as talking to anyone or anything. And as I progressed and I started to do groups, and my psychic sorority, as we called ourselves, asked, "Who are you?" They said, "You can call us angels." So I had to adapt to that. Okay. And after my first book came out, Diaries of a Psychic Sorority, I got invited by a metaphysical tabloid in London, sort of paranormal, wanted an interview with Princess Di on the 1-year anniversary of her death. And they flew me out to New York and they spent 5 hours with me, and they didn't want the interview. And I thought I had an agent at the time, and she's like, "Well, if Diana, who did this, I did this interview, so, like, what is this?" And it was so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's others. Maybe there's other famous people who want to speak. So we made this big list. And you know what? Albert Einstein wasn't on it. How sad is that? And I kind of now, in retrospect, imagine this party of souls who are trying to organize this thing, and we're not putting his name down. And so we would pick a name, and either that person, I would imagine, they would say yes or no. And when we got to John F. Kennedy, which, by the way, right now is really, really interesting. I found out some really interesting things after that dump of JFK stuff. But JFK said to us, we will tell you who's next. He revealed that this was a group of souls who had been working together, and they had this book that they wanted me to basically stenographer.
Mm-hmm.
And next was Albert Einstein.
Oh.
And so this was 1998, and I had started channeling 1988. So I'd been channeling for 10 years. And when I went to do Albert Einstein and spoke, it was the voice of every single reading I'd ever done. it was shocking to me. It was like, wait a minute. This is the voice of all the readings that just my normal reading voice. What is this? And then as I kind of thought about it, I thought, this is really the voice of sound. This was when I did my automatic writing spontaneously, and I asked, who are you? And they said, sound. And I thought, fine, I've been writing music since I was 12. I'm okay with that. But that was that. And so that took me a long time to process. That was it. I didn't come running out, hey, guess what? I talked to Einstein. It was kind of crazy. But it revealed itself that way. And then in 2005, I thought, okay, let's just do a little volume for Einstein. Because now I'm in love with him. Because it's like, oh my God, are you kidding? And so I channeled several groups and I sat down to edit this little book, 100-year anniversary of E equals MC squared in 2005. And what it ended up happening is he dictated to me that winter his unified field theory, which is something he never got while he was alive, including what he called the maps of human consciousness, which is how consciousness interacts with the fields to create reality, and a scientific quantifiable definition of compassion with a capital C as the fifth fundamental force of the universe. It's the creative intelligence that uses the four fundamental forces to impel the creation of the physical world one step at a time. So that was a bigger thing to try to have to adapt to.
How so, Barbara?
Well, I'm not a physicist. I'm not a scientist. I dropped out of physics and math in high school in 10th grade to go into music and drama. So to think that he was telling me in these channeling that the source of everything is in the center of the earth and it operates like a black hole. Now, this is 2005, so we have to keep track of, like you were saying, society progresses to where in 1993, when I started doing this, world peace was just whatever. Nobody cared. Today, everyone's like, we need to do something. So in 2005, scientifically, for me, a channel who talks to dead people to come out with this information that says, A, the source is in the center of the planet. B, it operates like a black hole. And C, compassion with a C is actually the fifth fundamental force, was a stretch for me. It was a hard stretch to think I was going to stand up in front of people, because what if I was so wrong and I was just making this all up? And then what would that mean to all of my work? There was a lot, but I had to trust, because I trusted everything so far was pretty magical and mysterious. And I did it. I put it out, and it was the book that got me going around the world. And since then, it came out in 2006, 2007, I think. I have since then, especially last April, I was at the Science of Consciousness conference in Tucson, which is put on by the University of Tucson, Arizona, Tucson, by the astrophysicist department, 30 years. And I came away from that experience absolutely, positively sure that this is what it is. But it's taken a long time. It's taken a very long time. And that's how it should be, I think. I think skepticism is very, very healthy. And I think skepticism will outlast the truth. I mean, truth will outlast skepticism.
Yes. So you were invited to this conference.
I applied to speak just on a whim. And they invited me because they have different levels. So the first level that you go to, and this was 30 years ago, all the scientists started it, and it grew into more like, meditators and Rumi poets and psychologists and Deepak Chopra. And so I called it the RV park of the conference, because they had all these postboards like 100 different poster boards and you were just squished in there and you put up your poster and you talked to people who walked by. But it was great because I met so many people throughout the conference who I could talk to about my work. I met a guy named, I didn't meet him, I met his people named Thomas Campbell. He's a astrophysicist who has the theory of everything. He calls it my big toe, and found out that his theory, I had him tell like his folks, just tell me his theory quick. It's like, that's my theory. And they said, if that's true, then he has the mathematics that back up my theoretical unified field theory. So that's just wild and crazy. And so I think back to 2005, where I was like, oh my gosh, I have to tell. And now I see, oh, I'll be sure. Brian Greene, astro string theorist, totally says black holes can be small. And in fact, maybe we're all in the side of the center of one. Crazy.
It is all very, very.
All I wanted to be was a rock star.
So I'm wondering, when we talk about unified field theory, do you have a sense that it's perhaps similar to Stephen Hawking's The Theory of Everything?
I'm pretty sure that so far, since I've been doing this since 2006 or 7, so whatever, 15 some years, every single unified field theory that I have ever seen, and I don't understand physics a lot, but I've listened to stuff, Nassim Haramein, as well as Brian Greene, all this stuff. We have the most complete picture of everything, and everything that I see or hear from them, I can put on this map. And the map is the map of what? It's the unified field theory with the maps of human consciousness. Okay. And it's an illustration. And it's because it is the unified field theory, it works exactly the same in the microcosm on the quantum level as it does on the macrocosm on the universal level. I see. So it used to be, now it's electronicized, but I used to travel around quite a bit and draw it by hand from nothing into the whole universe and present it all. And then afterwards, everyone would gather around like it was some sort of Mandela and just talk about like, whoa, well, where's Rainbow Bridge? You know, that idea of when your dog dies, there's a sort of, when you can see, we can put it on the map. You know, and where's this and where's that? It's like, here it is. Here it is. It's all here. It's really, really fascinating. It is all very magical and fascinating. I had another question. I'm remembering, because I have read a lot about Einstein, that when he developed his first theories, he developed them with physics, and he didn't have the math. He was much more gifted in physics than he was with math. And he actually went to some of his colleagues who did the math, and it substantiated, you know, what his theories were stating. Yeah, he did it. He did visioning. He imagined riding the wave of light, like putting his whole body into the vision of what it was rather than sitting down with the mathematics. It's very interesting. As a child, I think he didn't speak until he was about 5, but he thought in pictures. And so that would precede all of this gift that you're describing. And music. And was he interested in music? Oh, yes. He was very much. He played violin and piano. Yeah. Oh, lovely. Like me. A lot to be said for our musicians of the world. Now, we are getting ready for a commercial break. And when you come back, would you talk about the kind of research you did you conducted some research after you were given this information, and you're so humble about it and careful and I don't know whether you were skeptical, but I'd like to talk a bit about that. So love to. Listeners, when we come back, that's what we're going to talk about, but we need to take a break for now.
Were you an essential worker during the pandemic? If you needed to learn stages of epilepsy, did you depend on advocates? Did you use new innovations to cope with mental and neurological issues? Maintaining high quality of life and keeping good mental health are what we all strive for. I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each week top healthcare influencers, professionals, and innovators answer these questions and more. Stay tuned on Thursdays at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will continue to be frank about health with all of you.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the A Train to Sedona. I'm Linda Marsanico with my guest, Barbara With. So, Barbara, we're here to resume the discussion of the kind of research, what you looked into after being given all of this incredible information.
The drive to do all this in the first place was completely intuitive. At one point, after I had started to channel myself in 1987, and I was an antenna, and I thought I wanted to do this group. I thought, what would these voices that I was channeling, what would they say to a group of people, since my mentor did that? And I couldn't find anyone until these new women came into my life, Teresa and all of her friends, and then Kimberly, her best friend. And we sort of merged at the same time, where they were wanting to invite me over and I wanted to, I thought, well, here's my group. So we did our very first group channel. And this is really the answer to the question is what was this about? Not that we knew. I had no preconceived idea of what was going to be said in a group channel. And we were going to record it and transcribe it. And what it eventually turned out to be was these voices said, you can call us angels. And that they were here, they had this theory, this process that they thought if humans would do it and resolve conflicts internally, that the byproduct would be world peace. But they needed some humans to actually test it on their conflicts. And the three of us apparently volunteered and were chosen to be those. And so they were giving us what we called them the 6 master sessions, because we did a lot of triad sessions, but we did 6 master groups that we invited everybody we knew to come and listen to whatever they were going to tell us. We had no idea. And by the first group was about the voices of culture that affect us inside our head. And the second group, they called it conflict resolution. But the message was, if you're involved in a conflict, the root of your part of it is inside you.
I believe that strongly.
And I was revolutionary to me at the time, because I was very much a finger pointer, and I had my rage was sort of my challenge. But so that was revolutionary. And so what happened was the 3 of us eventually had our first fight. And we literally, the pressure was building. And so we decided we would we'll have at lunch and we're going to talk about it, right? Like conflict resolution.
Was it a real fight, or did you choose? Yeah.
No, you can't pretend to have a fight and then test a theory. And it was funny because it was not a fight about, he said, she said. It was that I had this incredible vision at that time about basically ended up with this thing that I think we are God. And And Kim, who was very much raised as a Christian, she's like, I can't be God. I'm crap on the bottom of God's shoe. That's who I am. So we were having this fight kind of, but we got together, right? Conflict resolution. And we start to, like, I try to start to explain about, the process that they're trying to teach us. And she's trying to do this and that. And finally, it's just boiling over. And I said, wait, let's get the transcript and read it and do it. And so I went and got it, and I read that statement, if you're involved in a conflict. And it took us a couple more cycles of what does that mean? What does that mean? It's inside me. I don't know. And then suddenly, because we were all trying to, like, we were trying, each of us, to turn around and look at ourselves, but we didn't quite want to, or, know what that meant. It's like the angels sort of gave us a help. And there was this kind of Satori kind of swooshy moment for the three of us at the dining room table. And we started crying. And I said, okay, here's what I need to do. I need to pay attention to you guys. I can't be, and then Kim, you know what? And here's what I need to do. And we were just so overtaken by how profound the orchestrated experience was in the bigger picture of things, but also how it turned out. And maybe what was most profound was I went to work that night. I was singing at a club in Minneapolis, and there was a waitress there who never had the time of day for me. 2 years I worked at that club, and just, I walked in, she couldn't get enough of me. Barbara, do you like Patti Smith? I've got these cassettes. I'd love to give them to you. Da, 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 da. And I was very suspicious. It's like skeptical. And then I thought, this is what the angels are talking about. That when we change it here, when we just change it here, it doesn't even have to do with the arena. And we clear this out, things around us change that we can't even facilitate. So that was really the beginning of that research that I still do every day today, because conflicts are a way of life.
I often say when I'm speaking or when I'm writing that we have interactions and we have reactions to those interactions. And when the reactions, well, they could be so-called positive or negative, but if it's a negative reaction, it is an opportunity for us to look within. What does it say about me? What can I learn about it? Is there something I need to be changing about myself? Because really the answers are within. And the journey is an inward journey to the core of where love exists and God exists. And many of us believe that Creator is in every electron of the body. So we're looking within, we're asking within, and we're interacting with Creator. That's very powerful.
Absolutely. And think about this, is that you and I can walk in a room and the same person can approach each of us, say exactly the same thing. You can lose your mind. And I can go, hey, that's cool, because that's your thing. That's your perspective and your gift. And I'll have my own. Somebody else will walk in the room and show me what I need to see in me. So I think it not only is the most powerful transformation, but it's the most systemic. Like when you get it at that root level on your own, like, oh, it's a decision I'm making. I'm lying to myself. They may be lying to me, but I'm lying to myself. And when I stop lying to myself, here is when systemic change then can happen.
And really, these are gifts from the universe when we have these interactions. And I say to my clients, I say to myself, when we don't get it, the situation is going to repeat itself again and again. Universe will send them not to punish us, but to help us grow. So it's a sobering thought. And there's a book that I like very much, the whole series that Neil Donald Walsh wrote, Conversations with God. And in one of them, he says, God, I don't think I want to deal with that. So God says, take 10,000 lifetimes, Neil. And Neil says, oh, I think I want to deal with that right now. So.
Okay. All right. Fine. because I think we have so much more of a hand in it than we want to admit. It's very hard to think that you would create things for yourself that would seem so suffering, but it's absolutely the only way that we can learn how to use our free will to willingly make the decisions we call it for the good of the whole, compassion, making decisions for the good of the whole, starting with ourselves.
Yes. Compassion is a very important topic for me, because when I started writing, I developed my website, and I wanted it to be, this is 2013, and I wanted the website to be about spirituality, but I didn't know how to focus it. Spirituality is such a wide topic, a wide concept. It took me about 6 months, and I thought it's going to be about love and compassion, because when you're loving and compassionate, whether you know it or not, you're spiritual.
Yeah. And I think that for Einstein to frame compassion with a capital C as the fifth fundamental force of the universe, as the intelligence that uses the other four fundamental forces to basically create the world, which is basically God, I thought, how brilliant that every spirituality worth its weight in anything has at its root love. And so compassion sort of encompasses all of them, all of every field of belief system and spirituality.
For me, love and compassion are soul sisters, because you can't have one without the other. And I've written blogs about it. It's a very important topic. Greg Braden writes a lot about compassion, and about how when we are compassionate, this affects our cells and the DNA, and we reach higher levels of possibility within our self. So I see that as a bridge to the things that you and I and people like us hope for and work toward. To be compassionate is really a very important and worthy goal. And I'm interested also, I know we have a few minutes before the break. Is there anything more that we need to say about this, what we're talking about now? Just want to be sure before we rush off.
No, I think there's always so much to say about it, but I think that the importance of people understanding that their individual work is part of this greater gestalt of compassion. Compassion is really that rudimental energy where we all meet.
Yes. And I will want to talk to you about the map of consciousness. And we're probably going to do a little bit here and then a little bit after the break. Now, where would we find a copy of it? Is it in one of your books?
Yes, it is.
Which one?
It's in Einstein et al. Manifestation, Conflict, Revolution, and the New Operating System. It's the definitive Einstein, where I sat down and illustrated, finally, all of the theories.
Now, that book is the winner of the 2016 Best Book Award for New Age and finalist in the 2017 Book Excellence Award for Body, Mind, Spirit. That's quite a
yes,
Barbara.
I'm very honored, very, very honored.
And okay, we have that book, and then we'll talk about your other books. I do want to talk a little bit more about the map of consciousness.
Yes, yes.
So when we come back, we will do that. We'll talk more about Barbara's books and this map of consciousness. Is there more than one map, Barbara? I have maps here.
Well, there are and there aren't. There's different versions. There's different pieces of a big, huge map.
So we'll talk about that. But for now, we're going to take a break, and we will be back.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
Hi, I'm Linda Marsanico. The A Train to Sedona is a memoir about my journey to love and compassion. It's also the name of my new broadcast on Wednesdays at 12 noon. When we are spiritual, we embrace possibilities and ideas, which strengthen our mind, body, spirit, health, and wisdom. On the A Train to Sedona broadcast, I plan to interview guests who embrace these expansive practices. Join us on Wednesdays at 12 noon on Talk Radio New York City.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the A Train to Sedona. I'm Linda Marsanico with my guest, Barbara With. So, Barbara, before the broadcast, we had a brief conversation about another of your books, Imagining Einstein, Essays on M-Theory, World Peace, and the Science of Compassion. Now, it won a National Best Book Award in 2007 for fiction and literature, New Age fiction. Would you share with our listeners that award and the fact that it's under an umbrella of fiction and literature?
This was an award that was given out at Book Expo 2007. Book Expo is probably the world's most foremost book conferences around the world in New York. And it won in that category. And my managers had submitted my application to that contest. And I actually didn't have any idea about it until they went out of business before the conference, but were nice enough to let me know that I had won that. So I imagine that fiction is a safe category. I always say that I'm not really here to convince you that I'm talking to Einstein. You know, feel free to think I made the whole thing up, but then you tell me what it is that he's saying. Now I knew this. So yeah, that's what that award was for.
Thanks for sharing that, Barbara. Back to the maps of consciousness. How do we utilize them?
Well, very basically, the map of human consciousness that I explain briefly to people is that we have these, what we call the 3 human dimensions. And they are very briefly intellect, which we find swirling around in our heads, intuition, which is emanating from our hearts, and emotion, which comes out of our solar plexus. And in our model, these 3 human dimensions have very specific definitions of what they do, how they work together. And then there's also what we call the witness, which is when we cultivate the ability we have to sort of step outside ourselves and watch ourselves, like we're a director on the play rather than the actor. And these 3 human dimensions are what shapes our whole entire experience of what we're experiencing in the physical world. So they are a part of creating our human bodies, and then our human bodies are part of sort of projecting and then perceiving the whole universe in this way that this map shows us how it's done. But these 3 human dimensions, it's our connection and our it's our domain, shall we say, of what we have been given control over in life. And if you think about it, no one can think your thoughts. No one can feel your feelings. No one can listen for your intuition. This is your domain. And so we teach people how to have a daily relationship to those dimensions, which, when people say, well, as within, so without, or turn within, I don't know about you, but for many, many years, I was, what does that even mean? You turn within, and then what are you looking at? So this map that Einstein's given us is so brilliant. It's so simple. It's not easy to do when you're out there and, you get triggered with an emotion, and then your thoughts are going, and then intuition is trying to get you to do something, but your ego's and, so there's a lot to do with that. But that's what that map really clearly illustrates about not only how it works, but then how to have mastery over it.
Very rich. And as a spiritual coach, I can tell you it stands very well in the realm of what I consider moving forward in health, energy, and having an effect on the world peace. So what is the one thing you want people to know in this chaotic world?
Well, given that I've just sort of described this basic concept of these three human dimensions, I want people to know that according to our model, and according to every single study I've done on myself and watched people do, is that the conflict that is at the root of everything that manifests, whether it's with your mother or at work or the war or anything, comes down to this one tiny little spot of conflict. And that is when emotion is flowing up from your solar plexus and it's informing your intuition. So emotion is so valuable. We don't want just a little bit of it. We want the whole thing to be flowing up, and it flows up and it forms intuition that's always going to tell us that next step that's going to be best for this whole operating system. Because intuition is that voice of compassion. It knows all that. Our intellect doesn't know it. So when it gets to the intellect, so intuition is impelling you to take this step. Maybe it's as simple as rest. You know how many times our bodies have said, rest. Yes. Our intuition, the same way. Gets to our intellect, and intellect says, I can't rest. I've got this that I have to do. And because decisions are actually implemented in the intellect, you don't turn the wheel of the car with an intuitive impelling.
Right.
We can say no to our intuition. And we do. And that, Einstein says, is the root of every conflict that manifests in the lens, every single one. So intuition doesn't steer you wrong to do things that might drive you into doing things that you need to do that maybe you don't want to do. So whatever. But it's when we don't listen to it and we don't do its impelling, then we're making decisions for the good of the few at the expense of the many, which is Einstein's definition of evil.
It's taken me a while to listen to my intuition, and I often take little 20-minute naps because I get tired. I'm such a high energy person, and I'll rest. And I remember in a session once, one of my clients did a 10-minute meditation. I asked, what was the experience like? Was it relaxing? He said, Linda, it was like a power nap. So whether it's a meditation or a mantra repeated, or it's actually resting on your bed or your couch, it's really good stuff.
And resting your thinking. People don't think about that. You can be standing in line at the supermarket and your mind can be racing. You're in tomorrow and you're into yesterday, and rest. Just rest that. Just look at what's around you. Take a breath. Yeah.
It's quite something that meditation takes we start to meditate, we get out of the thinking mind, we start to relax, and then we get into our multidimensionality, which is the prize. I mean, it's all wonderful, but meditation is, I don't know what to call it. It's just beautiful, and it's a gift that we have to connect.
Yes.
Out of our concrete three-dimensional experience into fourth, fifth, and more dimensions. There's a physicist, Sue Randall. She used to be she might be at Harvard now. And she says there are so many dimensions that if you have a pin in every space, there would be at least that many dimensions. So we can only imagine. And when he was alive, Stephen Hawking sat at a conference with her, and she said, my theories must be gathering steam because Stephen Hawking sat next to me.
Exactly.
Oh. Now, go ahead.
I just want to add that I would love if your listeners would start to think about these dimensions like independently. Like as you're just going about the day, start thinking about what does it mean that your thought processes are different than your emotional processes. Because so often emotion of anxiety will come up. Maybe intuition will say, take a breath or breathe or something. And it'll get in here with all the horses of the intellect, wild horses trampling, and you can't. So dealing with them separately, pulling the emotion away from the thinking kind of relaxes and releases it a bit so it can become more malleable.
It's really paying attention to our complexity.
Yes.
I have this and I have that, and I think creative was very, I don't want to say creative, magnificent in designing us, if I must say so myself.
Yes.
So we're getting to the end of the show, and I wondered, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners today, Barbara?
Just that I'm very optimistic. I think we as humans more than ever have this capacity to master ourselves. And that's the new frontier, as far as I think the scientists I heard talking was the new frontier is consciousness. And we each have that at our root. So let's explore and take responsibility for what is ours and let go of what's not ours.
Yes.
And I think life becomes much more manageable and much more magical as well.
Truly. Where can listeners find you?
Barbara with WITH, BARBARA, WITH, BarbaraWith.com. I'm also at synergyalliance.llc. That's more the publishing house and a lot of stuff. They're all interconnected in there. And yes, and if any of your listeners want to reach out, I'm happy to give you an hour reading for the price of a half-hour reading, if they would like to take me up on that. And you too.
In our show notes, we have all of this listed, and you can find the actual links for what Barbara is suggesting to you. Thank you so much for being with us, Barbara.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And next week, listeners, I have an interview with Ralph White, who is the co-founder of the Open Center in New York City. Now, that closed a few years ago, and he's now starting a new venture. Stay tuned. You'll hear lots of exciting things as well. But bye for now, everyone.